Hello, my name is Stephen Denman. My organisation is Shining Guidance. My website is shiningguidance.com. I'd like to talk to you today about how the mainstream media consistently subverts this 3D holographic reality within the material dimension, that is constantly being used and is being distorted, and the information they give is either half truths or is complete and utter lies that's made to appear authentic and sincere and realistic. They use very clever graphics, they use simulations, they use computer generated imagery or CGI, and they give you that sense of being an authoritative structure, a digital medium that you can rely on. And I would say nothing can be further than the truth. When we take a look, for example, at all the geopolitical, socio-economic, and cultural events that take place on this planet in this 21st century, and here we are in the age of the information and digital highway, the internet, where everything is easily accessible. When we take a look at organisations, for example, like the British Broadcasting Corporation, also known as the BBC, we take a look at ITN, Independent Television News, which broadcasts on ITV or Channel 4 News, or we look at Sky News or, say, Channel 5 News, just here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain. We can see that a very large amount of the information they give has got a spin on it, a sheen on it. There's a motive behind the reporting. It is not classed as objective, non-emotive and objective reporting. What is being broadcast is information that is designed to incur some kind of collective emotional reaction, usually negatively based. So there's fear, there's anxiety, and that is what they're after. They're wanting the British public, say here in the United Kingdom, to react in a certain way to what they're doing, because they can then steer the consensus thinking of the British people, as with the different nations of mainland Europe, whether it be in France or Belgium or Holland or Denmark or Germany or any other part of Europe. And it's the same in the United States of America, it's the same in Canada, same as in Australia and in New Zealand, same as in the People's Republic of China, same as in the Russian Federation, same across the whole of Latin America and the Middle East and Southern Asia and so on. It's the same everywhere. And what we know is that the elites, the hidden hand, whatever they want to be classed as, whatever they're deemed to be by conspiracy theorists out there in the woo-woo world, they are very, very obsessed with the idea of constant use of the technocratic state, the technocratic and scientific dictatorship, through using the mainstream media, predominantly through television. And obviously, as we know, this is a pun on words, because the television is telling a vision, and the programs people are watching, it's spelt as program, like a computer program, but obviously there's the two letters there, M and E, that's sort of attached to the end, so it's program me or program hyphen me. So it's a self-induced state. So millions upon millions of individuals across mainland Europe, United Kingdom of Great Britain, the Irish Republic, North America and everywhere else on planet Earth sit down and they watch television. They're telling a vision to you, the spectator who is watching their story. Yeah. And it really is his story, because it's a patriarchal based, therefore male dominated, elitist structure that's behind it all, funding and financing all of it. And what is going on is that they're giving you a narrative that they want you to believe. It's not what you should know is the truth, it's what they want you to believe, so they can steer the outcome, so they can then get you behind following their policies as much as possible and complying and being as obedient as possible to whatever socio-economic or socio-cultural imprinting and mind control through program hyphen me, while you're watching the television and it's telling a vision. And that is what is going on. And you take a look at the use of electromagnetic frequency rates that are specifically used in television transmissions and broadcasting. You can see how that affects the actual brain waves of individual human beings. We know that this has been causing mood swings and other problems. And so if we take a look, for example, at some of the technology behind how television is developed over the last, say, 30 to 40 years. We know, for example, that in the United States of America, on the 25th of August 1981, they developed what was called the Ground Wave Emergency Network, or the GWEN network, or transmitters, that were to be used as a form of emergency based communication in the event of a nuclear conflict. Presumably at the time that would have been obviously in the Cold War against the Soviet Union, the People's Republic of China. And then that was kind of wound down and decommissioned and definanced through the US Air Force on the 30th of June 1994. And then the Ground Wave Emergency Network, or GWEN towers, transmitters, were then fully repurposed on the 12th of April 1998 for digital technologies based applications that could be rolled out through the medium of television. Interesting, that word medium. You know, if you think of spiritism and spiritualism, you know, back to the Victorian period and how popular that was, and contacting, you know, shall we say, negative entities or astral entities in the lower astral plane. You know, they were doing seances, sitting sessions, basically, and the interesting play on words, very interesting. And so we know that the GWEN transmitters, or GWEN towers, were transmitting, and obviously still are now, transmitting very low frequencies, or VHF, and ultra high frequencies, or UHF, that specifically have quite intense and protracted effects on human consciousness, especially on different types of emotionality, but tend to excite negative emotionality of fear, anxiety, worry, anger, rage, frustration, and so forth in human beings. So, you know, this is going on a 24/7 basis, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, especially in Western Europe, perhaps parts of Eastern Europe, the United Kingdom of Great Britain, the Irish Republic, the United States of America, and obviously Canada. And, you know, probably even going down into parts of Central America like Mexico and Guatemala, predominantly in the Northern Hemisphere. It's a very, very severe problem, and it's almost just autonomically accepted. The vast majority of human beings have no conscious awareness of how severe this kind of mind control is. They're not aware of the technosis, you know, the technically based hypnosis that's going on, that is fully funded and monetized and driven financially by these corporate entities behind the scenes that are controlled by the elites, or the cabal, the hidden hand, whatever name people want to give them. So we know, we know very much that there's a very serious problem with addiction to television, because brainwaves are consistently being manipulated on an unconscious level through these types of technologies. And we know also that really, when it comes down to human consciousness, there is a war on. It is a type of infowar. It's an informatic war. And what is going on is that the majority of human beings have no awareness of how they're controlled. And, you know, you can go back to the ancient world. You go back to the time of the Medians in ancient Persia, which is where the Islamic Republic of Iran is today, in Central Asia. And they were employed, the Medians were employed by the Persians and many other Central Asian groups, because they were experts in different types of illusionism and magical stagecraft. And here we are now, really in the 21st century, with this hyper technologicalization of everything, you know, with the 5G internet coming on board now. Eventually that'll be a 6G internet, or whatever equivalent it's going to be, or whatever they'll brand it as and promote it and market it as in the next, say, 5 to 10 years. And we're seeing the same thing being rolled out, but now it's gone from the king's court, the royal court of the Medians, being employed by different kings and princes and different, you know, fiefdoms, different principalities across Central Asia, to trick and deceive the masses and quell them and subdue them into compliance, that, you know, the royalty were all powerful and all pervasive over the masses, to being the media in the modern age being used by different governmental bodies. You know, in the Northern Hemisphere, it's being used by the European Union in Brussels and Belgium. It's being used by various governmental bodies, especially in Western Europe, parts of Eastern Europe, the United Kingdom of Great Britain, across North America and so forth, to specifically keep in place a specific type of narrative, because they've got to try and contain human consciousness. I mean, you go back to the time of Nikola Tesla, the incredible, probably the most famous and unrecognised really by many people, unaccepted, but for me, one of the greatest human beings that ever lived, that incredible Serbian genius, Serbian inventor, you know, and you take a look at what he developed, which was free energy systems, the basis of wireless application protocols. And you take a look at his work, you combine that with aspects of the fantastic psychoanalysis of Carl Gustav Jung, you know, and you take these two individuals and some of the work of Wilhelm Reich and his research into orgone energies and orgone accumulators, and you see these individuals, they were incredible people, and they had the potential to set humanity free from this digital enslavement, this digital subversion that is consistently going on. And, you know, when I mentioned the Groundwave Emergency Network, or GWEN transmitters or towers that were repurposed from the 12th of April 1998 onward for digital technologies-based applications, it went from literally being under the control of, the US Air Force to then basically being corporatized and put out into the private sector on probably contracts and tendered contracts with the US federal government. And that information then gets put out there, and all that information is put into the private sector, and there's a huge amount of investment and research and development. And here we are all these years later, well over 20 years later, and who knows how advanced it covertly is behind the scenes. But we know it's advanced, and we know, for example, they've perfected 3D holographic technologies. They can create completely authentic condensed light reflective 3D holograms. So we know that the very basis of this 3D holographic reality within the material dimension is being subverted on a 24/7 basis. Another example of how the television is shaping people is how people view each other, in terms of being in your local neighborhood. So on a local level, a regional level, national level, global level, it's reframing and restructuring how people perceive each other, how they interrelate. So it's affecting on many levels, human psychology, and therefore the social aspects of behavioral psychology. It's really very serious, but the majority of people are so unconscious, so lost, and so fast asleep in the technosis that they don't seem to be able to understand how serious the problem is. And here we are, all these years later, after the work of the Serbian inventor Nikola Tesla was heavily suppressed. We take a look at the work of Wilhelm Reich, all his orgone research into orgone accumulators, is really where the basis of weather manipulation technology, or WMT, came out of in the various governmental bodies across the Northern Hemisphere. In the last 50 to 60 years. So we know that in Soviet Russia, or the Soviet Union, which is now the Russian Federation, they're probably the country with the most advanced weather manipulation technologies. And those weather manipulation technologies aren't just an application protocol just to be used on that basis. Those technologies can also be repurposed at any time through just using a computer keyboard, pressing a few buttons, changing a few algorithms, a bit of HTML code, and they can simply realign that for broadcasting purposes. So the very same, if you like, waveforms or airwaves that are being used to create, low pressure fronts and storms and gale force winds on one aspect can then be switched to then be used for televisual purposes, for imprinting the masses with specific sort of fear-based, mind-controlling narratives through telling a vision, and they are commanding a self-induced state of program me, or program -me, upon the masses. And then on top of all of that, you've got millions of people are sitting in their households, all these human beings, this collective unconscious, as Carl Gustav Jung called it, of literally human minds, human thoughts, literally paying for their own programming to take place, because they're paying for the electricity in their own residencies, while the corporations are then sort of giving them all this artificially imprinted synthetic perceptions of reality that are all completely and utterly bogus. And you can see how the televisual lie really is, what it really is creating is a technocratic psychosis, where an external corporate structure under the hidden hand, you can call it the elites, the whatever, the cabal, the elitists, the chosen few, the chosen ones, whatever. And there's so many different words and phrases that could be used to describe them. And conspiracy theorists have, you know, postulated for the last 40, 50, maybe even 60 years, oh, well, this individual, it's that group, and it's this it's organization, it's this and that, and so forth and so forth. It's not really relevant to go into sort of, you know, pinpointing the first names and surnames of specific individuals. It's just the groups. And these individuals within these groups, you know, whether they're, you know, reptilian hybrids with, you know, they've got a mixed group of DNA that ordinary human beings or Homo sapiens do not have, that could be perhaps a subject for another video. But what I do know is that what we are dealing with is the constant attack and subversion of human consciousness through the digital medium, and it really is creating a technocratic psychosis, a technically created hypnosis, and therefore a technosis upon human beings, and is, you know, using different means from anything to do with race or ethnicity, to religion, to gender, to sexuality, trying to activate emotional states of negative response in human beings, because the more fear-based and anxiety-based human beings are, and therefore the collective unconscious, as Carl Gustav Jung called it, or, you know, human consciousness, the more easily they are to manipulate, to enslave, and then push their thinking in certain directions that makes it far easier to make them compliant and subservient and more dependent on the state, more dependent on the hidden hand, you know, the elites or the cabal, which is what they ultimately want. Is they want everybody as subservient and compliant as possible. That ensures that their wealth, their power, their influence, their potency, their bloodline, family lineages can continue ad infinitum, regardless of populations and demographics and, you know, what's going on a local, a regional, national and global level in any country, whether it's within the European Union or the United Kingdom of Great Britain or anywhere else. We can see very clearly how serious it's going. I mean, perhaps the vast majority don't. You know, if you're in that level of a intensely imprinted technocratic hypnosis, technocratic state of thinking, and, you know, literally, therefore, you're literally 24/7 within this technosis of whatever, you know, is on the television. Oh, it must be true because it's on the news. You know, it's on the BBC. Oh, well, that's okay. It's on ITN being broadcast on ITV or Channel 4 News or Sky News or on Channel 5 News or any other digital broadcasting outlet. It makes no difference. You know, it doesn't mean they're correct, and they've been proven to be wrong on hundreds and hundreds of occasions. And I guess the feeling I'm getting here is that the vast majority of human beings are in a constant forgetful state within that technosis of the collective unconscious, and they cannot see what's going on with the use of, you know, extremely low frequencies or ELF, the manipulation of the brain waves that affect human consciousness. And therefore, if that's happening on a large enough scale to large enough mass of human beings, it's massively affecting the collective unconscious of humanity. And where that's heading is very serious, because it, you know, if these elitists or cabal at the top are actually, you know, so we say, to the point of being perfectly controlled themselves through demonic possession by extremely subversive and kind of quite eerie and sinister negative entities or astral entities that are dwelling in the lower astral or the infernal regions, and they're using ceremonial magic and kinds of ritualism, you know, through the secret societies networks all the time to kind of keep control, because they think it augments their power and influence and dominance over others, and it's all nod and wink winks and so forth, and, you know, golden handshakes, and, you know, it's all part of a wider conspiracy, I suppose you'd say. But what we have is a very serious problem, and what is ultimately going to happen is humanity is going to have to politically and spiritually awaken, and they're going to have to do it soon, you know, because, you know, in the next 5 to 10 years, things are going to be radically different, and at the centre of it has to be human psychology and therefore behavioural psychology, and at the centre of it has to be a sense of self-awareness, self-responsibility, and the strive and the need and the value to cherish human individuality and human freedom way above what the elites are doing, because they're going to fade back into the shadows in the next 5 to 10 years. We are going to enter a golden period probably after anytime from 2034 to 2035 onwards. So we've got a good 10 years or more of these problems that need to be resolved, and it happens on an individual level. So local first, then regional, then national and global. And people should switch off the television. One way to stop the constant technosis is to switch the television off, and know that you're going to be free. If you switch that television off, you've got nothing to worry about, because you're not allowing yourself to be unconsciously imprinted with their programming. And I think on that note, I'm going to wrap this up and say thank you very much for watching this video. There's plenty more videos to come on many different subjects in the very near future. Take care, folks.